Susan, I mean, I told you offline, you are one of the guests that I've chased for so long. I had to pass through an army of assistants and but finally I have you here. And it's a great day for me. Thank you so much for taking time.
You're welcome. I have to say my assistant's really tough to get by. So
They are.
Congratulations on Jackie giving you the approval.
Okay, so your ocean, I want you to be on transatlantic because I'm convinced that your ocean is one of a kind. You're not just a name in the advertising industry, but your career is truly inspiring. So I'm gonna go through the 7 questions, like the 7 C's, and we're gonna take it from there. Okay.
All right, let's see how this goes.
Okay, cool. First question: the sharpest object in the world is water. Now, when water is pressurized over 100 gigapascal, it forced through a 0.05 milliliter nozzle, it truly transforms into a weapon that is extremely sharp. You can actually cut anything, like from fruits to rocks, even a diamond, you can cut with that kind of pressurized water. It can penetrate like multiple layers. Now, you have to think about water as an element that is so adaptable and so flexible, and it changes like instantly. Is there an element in the industry that resembles water that can be soft, but can turn into one of the sharpest weapons we have?
I think this is an interesting question, and I didn't realize water could hurt a diamond, but that's impressive. That's a lot more power than I thought it had. I love this idea of thinking about, and my niece and nephew tease me because I can't say the word water correctly. I say water. I don't know why, but there's an R in there that just happens, and they relentlessly tease me because I can't say that word. But anyways, I find water absolutely, it's amazing. I mean, if you think about it, it can be irritating if it's dripping. Mm-hmm. It can be beautiful if you're immersed in it. It can be exciting, and like you said, it can be a weapon of mass destruction, I guess. But as I was thinking about this, I think it's, I didn't go back and listen to any of the other previous people you've interviewed because I didn't want to bias my answers. But I think ideas are like that.
Definitely.
If you think about it, ideas can be tepid. They can, you don't even see them. Right. They can just surround you, and we take them for granted. And then there are ideas that can change the world. There are ideas that can progress and push us forward. There are ideas that can really be damaging and destructive. I remember talking to a director one time, Bennett Miller, and he said, I have an idea that could destroy the world, a film. And he said, it's so simple and it will destroy the world. And I was like, why would you ever want to make that film? Don't do that. Let's not do that idea. But yeah, I think ideas, I think it's a pretty interesting range of what an idea can do.
I mean, you say something so fascinating, idea that can be damaging, it can destroy the world. I remember, I think it was a few months ago that I went into the rabbit hole of who invented the hydrogen bomb, the atom bomb, and how it was dropped
in Chicago.
Yeah, and the person who invented must have felt, I assume, the kind of same feeling. I remember that reading the biography of Enrico Fermi, which was one of the guys that took part of experiments. It truly must have gone through a lot of feelings, because you have, as you say, these element ideas, and they can turn into something very dangerous. And now we are seeing this with ChatGPT at the end of the day. Right? Can turn into something. Yeah, that's very fascinating.
Well, the gentleman who quit Google and said, I realized that what I've made is terrifying.
Oh my God, the article terrified me.
Yeah, it's getting to be a little Westworld out there.
It is. Anyway, second question.
Mhm.
Sand is overrated. It's just tiny little rocks. Now, this is a sentence that comes straight out of the pen of Charlie Kaufman, the screenwriter of the movie Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind. Now, I can't help but analyze these words. I see beauty in sand. Yeah, I see Charlie's point, right? If you look at sand from a scientific point of view, it's just a bunch of little rocks. Now, Charlie words are the mere definition of naked truth. Is there anything in our industry that is extremely romanticized? People look at it and they say, that's so beautiful. But when you analyze, it's not that beautiful, just a bunch of little rocks.
Well, first of all, I love sand. I actually
too.
I actually collect sand. So wherever I go in the world, I get just a little bit of sand and bring it home, and I have a crystal carafe I put it in, and you see, I can tell where it was volcanic sand, where's coral sand, where's just land sand. So
have you taken any sand from the Isola Budelli, which is like the pink sand? I think like in Italy we have like some beautiful.
No, I have to get there and get it. I have some pink sand from Bermuda.
Lovely.
Yeah, so that's where the coral breaks apart, right, and forms it. So I find sand very magical and beautiful. And if I have to fight about the big rocks, think about how hard it is to get those big rocks to become something so aesthetically, fragile. It breaks apart. So I actually think sand is quite interesting. But let's take the question about, I was thinking about, like, what do we value that I think it has too much value? What do we think? And for me, and this is going to be, I'm sorry I'm saying this, but I believe it is portfolios.
That's interesting.
I think we overvalue portfolios, and it's become a very fast, easy way to weed out, who we want to hire and who we don't want to hire. And I have found that when I've taken a chance on someone who I've just found incredibly interesting as a conversationalist, someone who, in the way that they express themselves, is interesting and creative and different, those hires have been actually oftentimes much more interesting. And I also think portfolios have a little bit of a bias in them,
right?
Because a creative or a person that puts together a portfolio that doesn't resonate with me, right, I'm just hiring my ideas, my way of thinking about what we do. So I think we overvalue portfolios, and we should take more chances on finding more interesting ways to think about, who might make a great match in this industry.
I agree. I mean, it's very interesting what you say. Also very helpful, because I think like one of the reasons why I start Transatlantic, and one of the reasons why I wanted so strongly for you to be on board on this, is like for things like this, because I think like a young creative, they need to actually try to deconstruct what they learn. Because I do think that sometimes I think that portfolio are like the moon. The moon always shows the same face. Like, when you look at the moon, you're only going to see only one face, no other face. It's this exactly the same face, right? But she has other sides. And so portfolio are the same. They're only going to show one side of you, constantly one side of you, which normally is the one that is the more filtered one.
Right. Well, it's interesting. When I interviewed a long time ago, I guess I was already a junior copywriter or writer, but I was young, and I was having some trouble at my agency, BBDO, of my own. I had caused it. I was working with somebody that it wasn't working out, and I didn't think I had the right, as at the level I was, to go and say it's not working out. So I thought I guess I better go look for another job. And so I interviewed at an agency, and I met the CCO. I had made it up through the ranks, and then I just went to see the CCO, and he said, my name at the time was Susan Fowler from North Carolina, and he was like, with a name like this and being from Pat Conroy country, I would have thought your portfolio would be much more exciting.
Oh, wow.
And mean, I just started in the business. I had like Pizza Hut print ads in my book. It was like nothing. This is a long time ago, like 1986, 87.
Wow.
And I was so angry. I went back and I wrote a letter to him. This was before computers.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, if I could write like Pat Conroy, I wouldn't be in your office trying to like write for, pizzas. And I don't think Pat Conroy would love doing advertising. I said, but if you need to see that kind of writing, here's some poetry that I've written. Here's a short story I wrote. I don't know what this has to do with advertising, but have at it. And I said, I'm going to do something famous in this business. It could be at your agency, it could be in another agency, but I will be good. And it's funny, he called me and he said, I just got your letter and you have a job if you want it. And again, that was
Did you take a job?
No. No, I stayed right where I was at BBDO. I explained, I went in and said I was going to, take this job. And my boss said, you're not. And I said, well, I feel bad, but I need to make some changes here if I'm going to stay. And he was like, absolutely. And so he was very supportive of me figuring out how to, get the right party. But it's an interesting thing because that CCO, he judged me not by my portfolio. He was interested in my response to being rejected. He was interested in creative writing. I remember that when I was working at BBDO, when I came up, it was a good note, which is that one of my creative directors had been a bartender, and he got hired because this guy and his partner would always go down to this bar to drink and work on ads. And they were like, well, he's funnier than we are. We should just hire him. So he got hired as a bartender.
Let me ask you something like, do you think that the industry in 2023 is shaped in a way to welcome this kind of interview process? Because I don't think it is, right? Because we're going on the opposite direction where you go LinkedIn and there is like a very strict job profile. And like, you interact with recruiter and they are so narrow-minded, most of them, right? Like, because not because they are narrow-minded, because agencies are narrow-minded, because agencies say, I need someone who work on automotive. Okay, I want to see all the portfolio of people who work on automotive. And so it's almost like you are feeding the monster of boredom.
Well, that's why I said those are those are the dazzling things that aren't that dazzling. When I pull it back, another creative director that I worked under, he had been a taxi driver. And again, this man was riding in his taxi and they were having this great conversation. He said, have you ever thought about doing advertising? I think you'd be amazing at it. But we don't look outside of the purview of who chose. I think that's another reason why we have trouble with diversity, is because it's hard to have a diverse group of people if you have one way of entering or one thing that you're looking for. So I mean, I've had fun because I just take weird chances on people and most of them have worked out really well. Obviously I'm not close enough to the day-to-day work to be hiring those kind of people, but I loved the wild cards. I love I remember there was a guy, Michael Illick. There is a guy, Michael Illick, who I adore. And he was just, I think he dropped out of college. I'm not sure, but he ended up getting a job in the pay stub bench, which is a sad thing that we don't have anymore. But he was in there. And I remember every day I would stop by before I went home to see what comics he had drawn, because he was always drawing these just hilarious observations. And one day I was like, Susan, you go by the bench every day to see what Michael has come up with today. Isn't that a sign that maybe he should be on your team? So I just went on. I said, you want to be a writer? You should come and join us. And, he went on, he's been directing for several years, but just a generous, hilarious writer. But yeah, I think everybody should be looking around, not at portfolios, but at people.
Right. That's a great way of like looking at, and hopefully, I don't know if the industry will change, because I think that once the behavior is formed, it crystallizes very quickly, and it's like to break it, you have to get a hammer, but the hammer has
there's that rock into the little sand. Right?
Yeah, it's like demolishing a house of habits, and I think like that's not an easy thing to do, because like it takes courage. And
one of the reasons I think it's hard is because we don't take the time to teach and train anymore. We want people to hit the ground running. And okay, I get it. But, you know, I think it's our responsibility if we really want to bring in the most interesting progressive. If you show me a portfolio that looks like the kind of advertising I want to do today, we're not going to be very progressive.
Of course. Yeah.
Versus if I see someone who's thinking in a way that has not been trained to do advertising, that might make it a lot more interesting. And by that, just give yourself the room to say one or two a year that you come upon completely an opposite, a much more creative way.
Yeah, definitely. Third question: when ocean crossing are done solo, battling storms and monster waves become transformative experiences that carry a point of realization with them. I read somewhere that the point of realization of being an adult is when you realize that nobody knows what you should do more than you do. Not your father, not your mother, not your best friends, anybody but you. That's when you realize that you have grown into adulthood. What do you think about this? Because when I read this sentence, it kind of shocked me. I never really crystallized this sentiment of adulthood. I still have my parents, both of them. As a matter of fact, they're very, very old, but they're actually here right now. They came to visit me all the way from Italy.
Oh, my mom and dad in San Diego. That's great.
Yes, very Italian. But yeah, what do you think about adulthood? Is it really like a point of adulthood when you start making choice on your own?
Well, it's interesting. First of all, if that's the definition of adulthood, I don't think I'll ever reach it. I am a team player. I do much better with people around me than alone. You know, I have a saying, there's nothing heroic about failing alone.
Absolutely.
I really think it's a dangerous sentiment, because I think you could become a lot like what I would not call grown-ups or adults, that are in our political system right now, which is that I think they all think that they know best, and they don't want to listen to anybody else. They don't want to hear anybody else. And one of the things that, you know, I do believe as a leader is, I mean, it's cliche, but I think it's true, is that the best skill set of a leader is to be able to truly listen to others. So to me,
was there a point in your career where Susan was taking a step on the right and someone around you, very close to you, told you like, I know you are on the journey, Susan, but I think like you may want to turn left right now. And you did turn left, and you listened
all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, our motto at FCB is never finished, and it comes from the heart, which is that right when I think I got it, that I understand it, that I know the way, I get shocked and go, oh, over there, I guess that's where I'm headed. There's a great thing, when we were younger, little, like pre-teens, we used to tube down this river called the Nantahala. It's a pretty rough little river for, you know, people. But anyway, so we'd get on these tubes and they would tell us, you know, if you get sucked into the eddy, you know, which is the swirling water that sucks you down, just kick your heels up to the sky, take a deep breath, preferably not when you're in the water, but when it's punching you up, and then you go back down, and let go. Just let go.
Let go.
And what happens is the river pushes you out. But if you fight that eddy, if you fight the river, the odds of you drowning go way up. And I think that adulthood comment of like, when you don't listen to anybody but yourself, or you don't, I think you're fighting the river. And to me, the whole point of being in this world with others is to always be sort of listening and absorbing and thinking and changing and evolving. So no, I don't, if that's what adulthood is, I don't ever want to be an adult.
That is awesome. That's one, when I was writing the questions, this was one of the questions that I couldn't imagine your answer, because I don't know you. I never met you, like, you know, this is the first time. And I think it was really one of the questions that, as I was writing, I thought like, okay, depending on the answer, I'm probably going to have a glimpse into like what she really thinks. And so I'm glad I did. Okay, fourth question. William Saroyan was an avid ocean lover and began to write very, very early in life at the age of 13. And he published many like book plays. One of his plays is called In the Time of Your Life and contain a marvelous, marvelous preface. The play itself is not as great as the preface, which is kind of like weird, right? But the last 3 lines of the preface, In the Time of Your Life, read, in the time of your life, live, so that in the wondrous time you shall not add to the misery and sorrow of the world, but shall smile to the infinite delight and mystery of it.
Oh,
If you were to send a message, if you were to send a message in a bottle to all the young creative in the world, in the time of their life, what would the message be?
I think I wish someone had not only told me, but allowed me the space to be stupid. Um, and I still feel this way, that I don't want to go out, with thoughts or ideas or expressions if I haven't fully thought them out. And I really do believe we have a saying at FCB that I say, but I'm not sure I can practice it, which is get smart and then get stupid. And I do think creativity, I had such a fear of putting something out into the world that people would laugh at, not laugh, but just laugh at, or, we're so critical of each other in this business. And I was talking to some people in New Zealand and I said, I wish we would stop that. Because if you think about it, if we are so worried about being attacked by our peers every time we do something, how often will we push into something uncomfortable or a place where we are vulnerable? And that's what it's all, I think that is what it's all about. It's the experimentation of ideas and not thinking that, putting something out there is going to ruin you forever. It's like, it's a moment. And as long as you're doing it with good faith of like, I'm trying to do something. And when I say right, I don't even know what that word means, but I'm being smart about what I'm doing. I might still get it wrong. But how, like I was talking to a colleague in South Africa, and I said, we have this saying in this business that it's, you're only as good as your last idea or your last piece of work.
Yeah.
And I said, I hate that. I hate that so much.
I mean, I found it like so stupid.
Creating fear, creating a lack of pushing. It's a terrible concept. And what I told him is, I said, I'm trying to live my life, the last part of this career, as I have bank, that I've the first 10 years, yeah, you're earning the right to be taken seriously or thought of as maybe having some talent. But at some point in your career, you do have bank. And if you mess up once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, you're not going to lose that. You have earned the right to push and to take chances.
Right.
And if you think about it, the whole concept of creativity and taking chances and putting yourself out there, they seem like they go together. And yet between the testing that we do and people wanting a sure thing, and, we talk about being creative, but actually the way that the world is set up right now in our business, it fights creativity.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think that
we don't allow ourselves, Allen Ginsberg, it was one of my favorite poets. He used to say, play the fool. We don't allow ourselves to play the fool, right?
Yeah.
Once like on a TV show and he played the fool, and some of his friends told him like, what are you doing? You are poets. And his answer was like, exactly, I am a poet. I need to play the fool. I am here to play the fool. I think like you're right. Our system right now is going again on the opposite direction. We don't allow ourselves to play the fool. You can't.
When we were going through COVID, we decided to do something. We asked all our agency networks to create a little film about vulnerability. And we kind of said you have to pick a tone. So is it humor, serious, sad? So pick an emotion, pick a style, like is it animation, graphics, film, whatever, just so we had a variation of creative. But it was so funny because they would come back and they'd be like, okay, here's our idea. And I'm like, does it have to do with vulnerability? They're like, yeah, can we present it? I'm like, no, just go make it. And they're like, but wait, I was like, this is the whole exercise of vulnerability, is that you just get to put yourself out there and there's no wrong answer. You're going to be right as long as you're on brief, which is you are finding a creative way to express vulnerability. That's it. And it was so much fun to watch people go through the process of becoming vulnerable enough to just, what the word you said, not even play the fool, just play.
Right.
And I had one CCO, their team did it was an idea that it was Noah writing to God about an idea he had in text, but God kept, the only thing that was coming back in text were the 3 dots. And the whole film is just Noah, but Noah's just this guy in front of a computer wanting to know what God thinks about his idea about the ark. And it's so good. And so I asked the CCO, I said, so how was the process? And she goes, actually, it was great. They told me what they were going to do. I said, great. They did it. They went out, they cast it, they edited it. I said, what did you think? She goes, it was so much better than I ever thought. I said, so is that how you work with them day to day? She was like, what? I was like, why don't you try it? Why don't you try a little bit more of that in your day to day? Because you just created a world where they didn't disappoint you or let you down. They actually exceeded your expectations of what that piece of work was going to be. So it was a great little experiment for everybody.
I think I think like when you face reality, I mean, we still work in a business where we need to answer clients and they have problem to solve. But I think your point, which I believe is like what I agree to, is if you just do a little bit of that can help. You don't have to completely take a step on a different direction, but still maintain focus on what serving your clients. But take a little bit of that, start maybe you have 4 walls and all of 4 are monochromatic. Just change the color of one of the wall. Maybe it's gonna make you feel better to be in that room. So I think yeah.
And that's why we're really focusing this year on strategy. And I know that sounds like, that doesn't sound as fun as just go for it. But I think that what happens is if we get our strategies really smart and tight and know what we're trying to do, because that's one thing is I see a lot of good work, but it's like, let's do something cool for the brand. It's like, no. Let's tighten it up. Let's really understand where there's a business problem or a business opportunity. Is the brand purpose? And when I say purpose, I don't mean cause marketing. I mean, is the reason the brand exists, is it still relevant today, or has it lost its luster? And if it's lost its luster, do we need to put that relevance back into the world? So what is that brief? What are we trying to do with this work? Once you understand what the work needs to do, then you can go crazy. Then you can just be creative but we're not, I don't think we're as tight on strategy as we should be. And I think we need to do that as a team with our client. Like we just redid our strategy briefs and we're trying to get everybody to get into them, because I was looking at them. We had a page with all sorts of boxes and thinking on them. And there was supposed to be one box that you were supposed to approve and all the other was support. But what was happening is people, are busy. And so they would approve a box that had a word on it that they wanted to see, not the box that we were going to work to. And so it was an absolute mess, versus if we can get it tightened down to, you're going to see something like this. So let's say for Michelob Ultra, we're going to show you an idea that makes the NBA during COVID fun. Okay, that's it. We'll see you in a little bit. But if we have that strategy, not this big, vague thing, we know what we're going to deliver, and then we can go really have a lot of fun. And I really do think understanding why you're doing something allows you the freedom to go out there and do it in really interesting way.
And it's interesting because I think as an industry we don't look at other field, right? I think I'm a boxing fan. I've been a boxing fan all my life, and I do a little bit of boxing on the side training. And I think like when you understand the strategy, that they call it the Swiss science for a reason. And like, if you go just out there trying to throw punches, which is another thing to do from a human body, maybe you're lucky, maybe you land one punch, but most of the time you probably get knocked out. But if
So you might get hurt.
if you go there with a straight, clear, original, unique strategy, tailor-made to your body, to your capability, then you have a chance to fight. But I think like we are surrounded by many other fields where this is already taking place. Dance is another field where this is already taking place, but we don't look at other field. We're just so focused on advertising and advertising only. That's like we don't allow ourselves not even to learn from anybody else. And
Yeah, it's interesting. I love that you said the dance. One of my best friends was a principal dancer with American Ballet Theater, and I would go with her to class. And I don't dance at all. But we would go to, the ballet bar, and we would both do the exact same exercises to warm up our body.
exactly.
And, she, for her entire career, she did ballet bar. She practiced first, second, third, fourth, fifth. You do your port de bras, you do all your leg work and everything. And then you go to the center and you perform, you dance, you create. And I think exactly what you're saying is we don't go to the ballet bar enough. We don't, or musicians that practice their scales every day,
Rehearsal.
their chords.
It's so interesting. I was watching a Al Pacino interview for the Actor Studio, and they asked him like, "What is your secret?" And he say, "Repetition, repetition, repetition." And so they asked him to articulate on that, and he was like, "Look, I was doing a play a long time ago, and there was this scene where I need to enter from the door, and then I found myself in the middle of the stage. I did it for 84th time. I never really understood the sense, the feeling of it, but I did it for 24th time. On the 25th time, it clicked. I finally was locked in. I understood the purpose of the play, but it took me 25th time to do it. Repetition is like so important because that's how you train. That's how the muscle, the muscle responds to it.
Right. What's interesting, because we've been having a little bit of a discussion lately about campaigns. And a lot of times campaigns are executionally familiar, but then it's what you do within that familiarity that becomes exciting. And so sometimes, the first couple of executions are okay, or one or we good, whatever, but then you just are always trying to beat that story. And it is fascinating that I had some bosses would say, "Aren't you tired of that campaign yet? Don't you want to change it up?" And I'm like, this has nothing to do with me. This has to do with the world, and quite frankly, if I can keep this fresh for as long as I can, it has so much more power than me getting bored and flipping to another idea.
Absolutely.
And we've set up this industry to reward the new, and I'm like, when I got into this business in the 80s, I was like, what am I going to write? What am I going to create that the next generation of advertising people can come in and play with and not have to start from zero? I was given so many great gifts, whether it was a powerful tagline or a really interesting positioning that you get to jump off of, and you're not starting from teaching people the very beginning of what this brand is about. Are we creating those today for the next generation? I don't know.
That's a really good point. Okay, generation. Talking about generation, this is like a movie that defined a generation. Like, in 1999, Trainspotting came out. I don't know. In 1999, I was living in Europe, so I don't know if it had the same type of waves that created.
Yeah, it was a pretty big deal here.
It was a big deal here. Okay, great. Because in Europe, I can tell you that defined like Generation X. So like, it was pretty important. In the movie, one of the protagonists, sick boy, uncover a very peculiar point of view in life and contending that everyone has a spark. And once you lose it, it's gone forever. And he then goes on to cite like, Lou Reed, George Best, the footballer, David Bowie, David Niven, Elvis Presley. They all had a spark once, and then it goes away. In fact, there is actually a beautiful song written by Liam Gallagher, and it's called Once.
Mhm.
And one part of the song, there is the line that says like, the gift is given to you, but then you have to give it back minus the sorrow.
Mm.
Because and it only happened once. What do you think about this? Do you think that as a creative, our creative mind, do we reach a peak? And then after we reach the peak, we either plateau or going down? Or do you think that there are different way, like, you know, there is no descending trajectory, but you're not gonna have this gift once? I mean,
Well, I guess it kind of gets back to the adulthood question. You know, that there's this moment. I remember my mom, she was an English teacher, a high school English teacher, and I would worry about people and, you know, high school students and why some are popular and why some aren't popular. And, you know, mom would say, Susan, everybody has their day, you
mm,
know, so don't worry so much, because people that aren't feeling it in high school, they will, if they can pull through, push through,
mm.
they will have a moment, they will have that moment, they will have a moment. And I always remember I was like, well, that makes me feel good, but I just don't like that the moment. And I was like, Mom, what if I peaked at 16? I'm done. You know, I was like, it was a good year. My
But
16 was
that's
really
interesting
fun.
because creativity wise, there are people that okay, I do believe that there's a peak. And I was listening also, like, there's a very famous interview to Bob Dylan, and someone asked him about how did you write those songs? Like, you know, it's a rhyme, like, you know, blowing in the wind. And he say, I can't write the songs anymore. And the guy say, why? What do you mean you can't write? He say, I did it. I did it one time. It was the result of like everything around me, the time in my life. I can do something else, but I
Yeah.
can't do that anymore.
Well, I think that's slightly different, which
That's
is
very
that,
different, yeah.
yeah, it's one thing to just say I had my moment in the sunshine and it's done. You know, there it was and it was great. And I don't believe that. Like I'm still like, what am I doing? What am I going to do next? Like what, you know, where's the next thing that, because I've never really thought about what I'm doing. You know, it's just sort of, I
So
kind of
you
show
don't
up.
think that creativity go trajectory down?
No, I still think I have so much. Well, I mean, I guess it can go down if you feel like you've peaked. I just don't think I've peaked. If this is
That's a
peaking,
beautiful thing, Susan.
oh my Lord, if this is peaking, I didn't do very well. I just, there's so much, you know, yeah, just like there's so much more that I want to be a part of creatively. Not necessarily advertising. Um,
That's awesome.
yeah, I've just been reading that Rick Rubin book that came out, and it's so much fun,
Hmm.
you know, but he's just like, anybody can be creative. You just have to practice it. You know, it's just, and I don't even think I practice it that well, but if, you know, yeah, I don't, first of all, I think most people are creative. My dad always says that he's not creative. And I'm like, you are too. You just don't, you define creativity as something that, you know, is very flat. But no, I think being alive takes
I think
creativity.
I think creativity has, probably your dad say that because we train ourselves to think as a creativity only like in the art and field, right? Like, you know,
Right.
so you think, oh, you're creative. So, and I was talking to a friend of mine, an Italian friend of mine, and he was telling me like, hey, you are creative. I'm not that creative. But then I'm telling you now what this guy has done. This guy
Mhm.
has created like a one substance that you normally put in the machine. No, normally if you were to have like the bottle cap, if you want to
Mhm.
change the color of the bottle cap, you had to like adjust the machine, and it takes days to go from green to white. You have to clean the machine, you have to like reinsert like a new additive. It takes day. This guy has created something that takes only an hour to do that. And in fact, he has like, you know, a company and is doing awesomely, like, you know,
Right,
maybe
right.
that's creativity. That's
Yeah,
pure creativity.
absolutely.
Can you think that I'm creative? You're not. When
Yeah.
you are the proof of being creative. But I think there is this connotation of like, oh, you creative as arts and field. Like, you know, but as you say, you can be creative in like planting a plant.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Sixth question. There is around 20 million tons of gold dispersed throughout the oceans. It is diluted pretty much to a pulp, but there is a lot of gold out there. If the ocean's gold were equally distributed among every person on Earth, each of us will receive 9 pounds of this gold. Now, looking at the advertising landscape, do you think that it is gold everywhere? Is there richness still to be found? I'm not referring just to the economic richness. I'm referring more to the cultural richness. In a few words, do you think that the ocean floors of advertising is still filled with wonders?
That's a good question. I think that the ocean floors of advertising, the wonders are covered up by a lot of plastic and debris. I think we are not responsible enough for the things that we put into the world. And we do, on our best day, we do some pretty incredible things that are pretty special. But I think that we create a lot of noise, and I call it noise pollution, that is not doing anything but taking up space, and stepping in front of us. And I don't know what to do about it. I mean, we have a little saying at FCB of like, are you creating fairies or flies? And what I mean by that are the things that you're making people swatting away as fast as you can put them in front of them, or are they twinkly little interesting things that people are curious about? And until we take that responsibility to heart, I do think that our industry is slightly in danger. The problem is, I don't know what the problem is. I think one of the things that has happened is the separation of media and creative, and not looking at the two of them serving each other, and the ability to buy our way into eyeballs. Like I'm very upset right now about, I get this feeling that if you're buying media, you don't really have to worry about how creative the work is, because you're just going to buy your way in. But if you have if you want earned media, then you have to really pay attention to being creative and serving, putting something out there that people want. And I don't like that idea. I don't think that just because you can, you should. And so I think that we need to get back to, I don't know how we do it, but what's worthy of, people's time? Do we limit the amount of advertising people see in a given hour, or or space? I don't know. How do we get more responsible about how much work is out there, where it is, what it is, without regulating it? Because like we were saying earlier, in our search to get it right, we're going to get it wrong a lot, but it's at least we're searching.
But it's funny because I do think that our global warming, the global warming in advertising, is actually the separation of media and creative.
Yeah,
I think that and it's something that I can see clearly. My wife is a media director, and we met at Chai Los Angeles. I'm a creative. Only once in our lifetime, in our career, we got to work together. Truly, like media and creative working together since the get-go. But that time was enough for me to understand the potential that you could have unlocked.
It's so much better. It's so much better, because and if you get it right, then people want more of it. They do. They look forward to it. Like, I grew up in a time where I loved advertising. I mean, as a kid, I looked forward to the ads as much as I looked forward to the programming. But it was responsible. It's like, you knew when it was coming, you knew how long they were going to be. And we're starting to see that now on streaming platforms. They'll actually say 90 seconds worth of advertising before we get back to your show. They're starting to break at the right times, not interrupt a sentence, of an actor. It's like there's starting to be a slightly more respect put back in. But yeah, I think that the dance between media and creative is a beautiful one. And they also serve each other. I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, you know, it's come to my attention that if we create a great piece of work that doesn't need to be refreshed as often or remade or whatever, we actually lose money because we only get paid to make that work, not how often it runs.
Yeah.
Media company makes money if we create something that people want to see again and again and again, but we don't. And that's not sustainable. It's weird.
Okay, look, we arrive at the shore. And it's like we have a question for you, which is the question we ask to all our guests. If there was a wind that blow your sail and you had to name it, what would the name be?
This is an easy one. I think it would be grace, gratitude, and generosity.
Grace, gratitude, and generosity. Triple G.
It's the triple G. Yeah, it's something I've been taking to heart over the last decade, and I think probably put words to it over the last couple of years. But I think the grace to know we just get to be here, and that in and of itself is enough. The gratitude to be thankful for what we've been given. And then with the grace and the gratitude, I think the outcome is you're able to be generous. And I think generosity is one of the most beautiful human feelings that one can take with them. So yeah, grace, gratitude, and generosity.
I love it. I love every single word of it. I mean, they're also very much like, sometimes like in Italian, also in English, you have those words that are onomatopoeic, where it's like, you can hear the sound inside the word. And like, I always love the word generosity because it almost like open up as you pronounce it. Open arms. Anyway, look, thank you so much for being on board the Transatlantic. This was like an amazing ocean crossing, and like I'm really, really happy that we got it done.
Nobody got seasick, so that's good.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye.